think this is where technology is really tricky, because we adopt it because it's so seamless, right? And we don't really recognize necessarily what we're giving up in favor of using that. And so I think the tipping point has to be one that we become aware of. And it's something that I've recognized in my own use, and I'm thinking about how I can help my kids identify that point as well, right?
Do you have questions about artificial intelligence? This episode is for you. We are excited to introduce Rowena Spencer to you. She is an expert on AI, and we are going to talk about all things AI today. And honestly, we just scratched the surface. This really just made me realize how many questions there are surrounding this subject and all of the ethical, value-oriented questions about this. So enjoy. I mean, we have it covered for you today. If you are raising kids or grandkids right now, we spent about half of this episode on the implications of AI and our youth. And these are important conversations to have. So welcome into Lessons from Living. I am Beth Graham, and here comes Rowena. Well, welcome, Rowena. We're so happy to have you on Lessons from Living today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me, how did you personally get interested in the subject of AI? Was it something in your background or that drew you to it?
Yeah, I think a mix of things. So a lot of my professional background was in digital media and advertising. So I kind of saw what we call the attention economy firsthand, right? How ad monetization sort of changed the trajectory of how we spend our time online, right? And how people are kind of incentivized to stay in certain environments and with certain platforms. And then more recently, I've worked for not in the AI space, but sort of for a company that works with it. And I came across like old AI when I first left college. So the combination of those things, plus sort of knowing that eventually tech companies kind of look at students and education and schools as a potential avenue and customer base as well. Plus everything that's going on with social media, I think all of those things kind of led me to, what is this going to mean for my own kids? I have two young kids. Like, how is it going to shape the environment that they're growing up in? But also, what skills do they need to focus on more to when I know that they'll be using that technology? So I know that the use of the technology itself isn't what worries me. I think that's what, people will learn. My kids will learn technology way faster than I will at that point. But it's sort of like the entire ecosystem around the technology, I think, of how we approach that, what we think about, what we should focus on. And AI is just going to, and is kind of accelerating, augmenting everything. So how do we adapt to sort of support all of that as well? So
Right.
yeah, a mix of kind of professional background, personal interests, obviously invested interests because of my kids, and yeah, sort of a fascination of everything that's just going on.
Uh-huh. Well, something that I appreciate about you is that you seem to have a really pragmatic approach to the subject of AI. You say we shouldn't be fearful or angry. Sometimes you do see that. And you acknowledge that there are positive aspects to AI. Why do you think it's important to hold kind of a reasoned position on the subject?
I I think it's very easy to sort of group, like when people talk about AI now, we're inevitably usually referring to the newest AI chatbots and large language models that we're using, right? Like ChatGPT, Gemini, Claude, are some of the main ones that people would probably know. And so there's sort of that automatic association, but AI does so much more, and the power behind it isn't those chatbots. So I think if we end up kind of lumping those together, then we risk like dismissing all of the good and the positive things that can happen. So obviously with technology, there's always a bad side, there are always bad actors, but there's a good side as well. And so I think the idea of two things coexisting and two truths that are happening at the same time is something that we have to recognize, and we're always sort of in the murky middle trying to
Yeah.
navigate it all and figure out what it means for us and live with that ambiguity, which I think is a really uncomfortable place to be
Hmm.
overall.
That's a good point. So, as you mentioned, it seems like we hear more often about the negative aspects. You and I talked briefly about the suicides in US among the youth that are related to it. And we'll discuss kids and AI extensively in a minute, but let's focus on the positives. What are some of the positives as you see them?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not something that I dive into a ton, but it's used for a lot of medical research and medical advancements. Bringing new drugs to market faster is one way that we've seen AI really kind of accelerate both development and approvals. When I think it can be applied to all sort of jobs and situations, which is what does make it scary. But I think the main thing is looking at it from an outcome perspective. So obviously, if we talk about kids in schools, the risk that I see there that I worry about is adopting things just for the sake of it, right? And not knowing what the expected outcome of it is overall. And we've sort of seen that with ed tech, I think, in the debate that's going on around that. That kids in front of screens all day is obviously not a good thing. We know that, and we know that handwriting is better, and things we learn better with writing and cognition and stuff like that. But there's a rush to kind of adopt this technology, and that's what I've seen. We see that with kind of enterprises as well, right? There's a huge amount of investment from corporations and things in AI. And then how do you get the returns? How are you adopting it? What are the actual outcomes that you're trying to achieve with that? Not just, hey, everybody here's AI, use it.
Yes.
Because I think, again, especially from a minor perspective, young students, etc., not everybody responds to technology the same way, right? Like even if
Hmm.
I just look at my own kids, one of them, if we watch a show or they're doing something on an iPad, like one of them is completely fine if we say it's time to turn it off. Okay, it's off. The other one, it is a big challenge and drama and it has to be managed, and it's just two totally different responses, and it's the same device, same technology, same show. So I look at that and I think, okay, this is, just as kids don't learn the same, one person doesn't learn the same as another, and one person's not motivated the same as another,
Right.
it feels the same as technology to me. Like, we don't all respond the same to these things. So I feel like I went a little bit off topic with the good side of things there a lot, but yeah, I think we are seeing, lots of efficiency and gains in different fields,
Yeah.
but that comes with a big transformation overall. And again, that transformation is really uncomfortable and
Okay.
concerning.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier the ambivalence that people feel regarding it. I noted one of your comments about Gen Zers, particularly having ambivalence about AI. I think it's probably true of a lot of people because, you know, you can appreciate the helpful aspects of it, but then potentially feel guilty about using a tool that might be undermining our growth or compromising what we're producing in some way. Is there a way to know when AI has become a crutch and might be undermining our skill development?
Yeah, I think you're referencing the HBR study that they did and showed really how Gen Z is using AI and how they feel about it, which they said I think was one of the more comprehensive studies that's been put out. Um, I think I think this is where technology is really tricky, because we adopt it because it's so seamless, right? And we don't really recognize necessarily what we're giving up in favor of using that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the tipping point has to be one that we become aware of. And it's something that I've recognized in my own use. And I'm thinking about how I can help my kids identify that point as well, right? Like we do a lot of work nowadays, I think, around emotions and recognizing your emotions and things. And this to me is sort of another layer of that, right? Like, where do you feel like you're not in control anymore? Why do you feel like you're not in control anymore? What are the things in, as they get older in design and stuff that might keep you in a digital space for longer than you think you should be? So I think a lot of it is just that it's probably the self-awareness side of things, and being able to recognize when it's tipped from kind of tool to something that you're defaulting to. And and sort of recognizing those trade-offs again, right? Like I think I did an Instagram post recently where I was doing an errand with my daughter and it wasn't far away, but normally I'd probably use Google Maps just so I could know exactly where the location of the place was that we were walking to. And I was sort of like, why would I do that? Like then we're walking, I'm checking my phone to see, I can just open my eyes and start looking for the numbers, which seem less prevalent than they used to be. I feel like everything used to be numbered and I was like, there's a whole chunk of stuff that is
Not
not
so
numbered.
obvious, huh?
Yeah. But it turned into like a whole lesson for us. And it just made me really think like each time I'm trying to be more conscious myself, right? And I'm a adult with years and years of experience. So how do we kind of get in front of that for kids and get ahead of teaching them really like how to be an active user, not just a passive consumer?
Mm-hmm. Well said. This is kind of along the same lines, but you had commented that AI can enable us to be lazy, to notice less, be less deliberate, less selective, less purposeful, less specific. If we're trying to develop that self-awareness, I kind of feel like if we've hit the point where we've become lazy, is it possible? Is it possible to have enough self-awareness for us to be able to say, look, this has turned into something that is not benefiting me anymore?
I think so. I mean, I think it kind of goes back to, awareness and agency and accountability. I didn't mean to use 3 A's, but I just did.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, I'll have to remember that. And in particular, the agency and all three, but the agency and accountability point, like, right, these are our decisions, and we have to realize that we're in control of that. And that is also uncomfortable, right? So, if I think about, again, I'll give a little personal anecdote. You and I have talked about how I've moved abroad. I live in a foreign country now. I should be learning the language. I'm trying, but I am not where I would like to be. And a good chunk of the reason of that is probably because technology enables me to get by without it.
Hmm.
And yes, a lot of people also speak English, but I can rely on Google Translate and other tools to help me when I need it. But ultimately, that accountability kind of lives with me to prioritize learning and make the time for it and make that a priority. So, not learning it, I have no one else to blame but myself. um,
Hmm.
and so I think again about kind of acknowledging, and it's not fun for me to say that, um, but yeah, acknowledging those ways where we are accountable, we do have that agency to make those decisions. We don't have to. It might be easier to ask AI because yes, there's an answer button literally in our pockets, but we can do something else instead.
Right. That's a good point. This is a question from a listener, and she said, how does a person determine what truth is anymore? We have politicians and media routinely lying, and now AI potentially confirming those lies. That's a tough one.
I wish I had the answer. I have a lot of empathy for that question. I think it's something that we need to talk more about as a
Mhm.
society and be aware of. And again, to the point of AI amplifying things, right? It's AI that's behind the algorithms on social media that are making your reality something different from mine. My husband and I compare feeds, and I'm like, we're not living
Yes.
in the same world. I don't know. And so, again, back to kind of the awareness and acknowledgement of it. But I think, and the more people that are aware, maybe the more we can, you know, either ignore, discern, come to sort of a better place on it. There are great resources that offer insight into things like AI generated videos and improving like the media and AI literacy around that. That's something that I think is very variable in terms of being taught in schools, like digital media AI literacy in general. So I would encourage anybody listening to kind of know, if you have kids in school, what that program is. I think we just go on a tangent about that. Like, again, my kids have just recently sort of started real school, and I know my expectations for math literacy, reading literacy, writing, right? But digital literacy, AI literacy, media literacy, those are all kind of new enough that I don't even know what my expectations should be from the school necessarily. I know that
Right.
now I want them to learn that, and I know that they need to learn it. But I don't know sort of at what they should be learning necessarily. Like, I have my own
Right.
opinions, but and I'm lucky that where I am, they have a very kind of clear published, well, some published curriculum around it. But um, globally, I forget what UNICEF has said, but the statistics on it are just vary so widely. And obviously in the US, from sort of state to state, right? It's all different. So I would definitely
Right.
encourage people to kind of find out what is being taught and what the curriculum is on those subjects.
Okay. To the end of trying to determine what is real, what is not, what is truth, I noticed that China had created regulations that require explicit and implicit identification of AI generated content. On its face, that seems very reasonable to me, because like you said, there's so much we don't know. It's hard to even know what questions to ask. There's so much we don't know. Why wouldn't the US and other countries want to do something like that? Is there a
I think,
reason?
yeah, I mean, I think they should. I think it should be disclosed, right? I think the idea of not knowing if we're looking at a synthetic person or a real person is incredibly dangerous and disorienting and has all kind of profound impacts that we can't even know what they would be right now, but doesn't seem like it would be good. So I think it should be done. From like just the experience again that I have kind of in digital advertising and technology in general, it's like from the US perspective, especially the privacy laws vary significantly from state to state. So I think, there's kind of there hasn't been any sort of federal governing position on it is one thing. But also it's always been historically opaque so far for like sort of the last 25 years of the internet, the way that things have changed and all the data that's been collected, right? Everything that we do on the internet is sort of tagged, anonymized, aggregated. We're put into sort of buckets for targeted advertising. And I've probably made the assumption that I think most people know that, but I would imagine if I asked around, I don't know to what degree people know that, because we all sort of click accept on cookie policies and all of these policies, and they've made them so long and complicated for people to understand that we've sort of learned to dismiss them. And I'm reteaching myself as well I think, of just what exactly am I agreeing to? What am I looking at? And it's a new lens, I think, again, with kids of, what would I even be agreeing to on their behalf? At that point, it's one thing if I do it and it's, shame on me. It's another thing if I do it on their behalf, and shame on me if I've done something I shouldn't have on their behalf.
Yeah. Well, I was just wondering, is there some kind of slippery slope that people are worried about as far as um, trying to rein in AI to some degree, but yeah, I guess there are privacy issues. There's probably maybe they're worried about everything having to be defined, like images and written work. Then are you going to have to say, okay, I use chat to help me
I
figure
figure
out this
out.
outline, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and I think the other thing is I'm assuming it will become a tool in the toolbox. Like I personally could not tell, because this is not something I have any knowledge in, like the difference between something that is AI, well, I can know by the language, I suppose, but like AI generated versus CGI, right? Like if you think about movies, films, and stuff like that. I'm assuming there's a significant amount of work difference between them. and, but like if AI is getting so good that they look similar, I don't know where that line is and where that disclosure
Yes.
is and where like, what's being used as a tool versus an output, and probably where do you draw those lines and things.
Yes.
So personally, I think, like, again, when it comes to, I think there are different names for them, right? Like digital avatars, synthetic people, digital twins, like anything that is human-like, I think should be very clearly AI labeled. But so far, anything that I've kind of seen with watermarks and digital like fingerprints and things, if you if there's one there's entire Reddit posts and things saying, here's how you remove it. So,
Mm,
I mean, it's the same as anything, right? There are always going to be people who kind of prefer to use it for disingenuous purposes, I think. Um,
right.
but the more we can, I suppose, talk about how that should be, I think back to like the idea, well, you know, teaching kids digital literacy, AI literacy, like what happens, the kind of ecosystem around the technology one of those things is really digital values, right? Like, and around how we behave online and things. And that can be one of those sort of items that should be taught. Like, if you are doing this, it is wrong to not label it for these reasons, right? And then we should be teaching that.
Right. I think I might have told you that my daughter, my youngest daughter, Eva, was probably in her second year of college when AI really became mainstream. And so she saw the difference. She saw the contrast between being in school without it and then being in school with it. And she commented that everyone is using it, that the professors have tools for determining whether a product has used AI. The kids have tools to thwart that discovery by the professors. And kids are being held accountable because it's considered a cheating offense.
Yeah.
But, she pointed out she doesn't know what to do because she said there are some areas where we are allowed to use it, but she's so afraid that something is going to be evaluated as AI derived product that actually wasn't, that she just is holding it all at arm's length, which is probably a shame too, because it
Yeah.
can be an effective tool. It's kind of crazy when you talk about teaching our kids values and just staying ahead of them. I feel like, especially in this regard, just staying even with them, it'd be good to be a step ahead even. We're going to be toast if we're not able to do that as parents, I think. Do you think it will be possible to keep up with what is going on with our kids?
I think kids are, I mean, you have kids older than me, so
Yeah.
all I have is my experience as a teen and things. And, kids will always hide things from their parents, right? I think to
Yeah.
some degree. And so that's normal, but, um, I think now parenting is certainly more about building connection and
Hmm.
making sure your kids know to come to you with things. And technology is one of those items, right? And taking an interest in what they're doing online and what they're using, and just making sure we kind of know. I mean, I think again about my personal experience of a lot of stuff that my parents said. Yeah, okay, whatever, it kind of gets a bit dismissed. But then, at least later in life, I've come back around to say, oh, that's why, or oh, I
Yes.
appreciate that now, or okay, it's maybe it took longer than they wanted, but it's clicked, and those things never left. I just
Yeah.
put them aside for a little bit while I thought I knew better, and then eventually you realize, okay, they were coming from a place of wisdom and perspective, and that's why they told me these things. So
Yeah.
I think there'll always be some new name, new tool, new app, right, that they know about faster than parents. And
Yeah.
we can know about main ones, right? Like, oh, um, my friend is playing whatever game on Roblox, and I know where I feel that is in terms of like the safety, like scale of things, right? So I know as a parent how I feel about that platform in general. And I think we have to look at every platform and every app up until they're, adults, to know and have our own compass and kind of lens to say, what are the criteria? Do they meet these criteria? Do I think it's safe? And then still really be involved in what they're doing with them.
Yeah. Okay. I jumped ahead to kids too fast. I want
No,
to
I
go
did.
back
I
a
think it
little
was
bit
me.
to no, no, no. That was my fault. I do want to get to that, but as far as the accountability goes, that was the word you used. You referred to the XAI's production of harmful, illegal, deepfake images and noted some of the responses of the producers and the users were the AI did it. That sounds like my kids. It was him, not me. Your point, which is very well taken, is that humans must always be ultimately accountable. How do we keep humans accountable for AI, do you think?
I wish I had an answer for that too. I mean, I know how, yeah, I don't know how from sort of a leadership level that can happen with what's going on nowadays, right? Like I think like where that was concerned in general, that was really the images that were coming out of Grok, the AI chatbot that's on the platform X. And I think governments are holding both Elon Musk and the platforms accountable, and that varies by jurisdiction and by country from what I've seen so far and understood. But ultimately, like one of the things that was so jarring to me about that was that it seemed to take on this viral perspective and lens, and my immediate reaction to that was kind of why did people even think that this was in any way acceptable? And that sort of speaks to like the viral nature of things in general, how quick people are to jump on a trend or do something or whatever it is, and back to digital values and digital citizenship and all these things, right? Like, I think that was what struck me, because ultimately it was a human who was, I mean, there could have been bots as well doing this, probably. I wouldn't be surprised. But, you know, in theory, it's human prompted. And so I think, yeah, that's again where it sort of struck me as really early digital values and understanding, and that, you know, these things you are held to account, right? There are cases, I've seen a few in the US of deepfake images in schools, and kids being held accountable for that. I can't remember the exact details, but, you know, there is individual accountability, and I think that really needs to be taken seriously, and we need to make sure, again, that we're teaching that that's a real thing.
Yeah. I had an AI specialist comment to me that times are changing, the world is changing. If we don't change, we'll be left behind. In your comment, you said that technology is part of human progress, but that progress should be human-centered, not just fast for the sake of speed. I love that. How do you think we can make this human-centered? I almost feel like we need a mission statement or something, you know,
Yeah,
to declare
exactly.
like,
Probably, yeah. And I think it's that like societal recognition. I mean, I was thinking about it today just in the context of like, well, a couple of things, like more from sort of the negative lens again, but like if we think about it, like addiction and willpower, I think you know, there's a big social media case going on in the US right now, right? That's kind of centered around whether the platforms have addictive properties and can be held accountable for that. And you know, you can extend that to the idea of chatbots, right? Because they are very sycophantic. They keep you engaged. They'll always ask another question. They don't end the conversation. Like, it has to be up to you to end the conversation, right? They will keep going forever, and there are tons of
right,
silly videos about it, but it's serious. And if people don't recognize that, you know, that's what's led people down these kind of delusional paths of these very long extended conversations. So I think AI in this context again it's like a new kind of willpower, right, that we have to reckon with. And I think about like, again, as a parent, like I was never my parents never smoked or anything, but if you think that people who smoked, I think kids had a 4 times more likelihood to be addicted to cigarettes as well. And I think about that for like phones and devices, right? If I'm addicted to my phone, chances are as soon as my kid gets one, they're going to be more likely to. And I am not, I again sort of am trying, recognize my own faults in this, that I need to be the one who's accountable and improving then. Um, and then it becomes sort of a trajectory thing, I think, and hope. But yeah, I think I think all of these things are really like community efforts. It's individuals
Uh-huh.
coming together. It's kind of working with schools. Um, yeah, it's definitely a collective effort, and it's not like, to me, it's not a collective effort against technology. It's a collective effort of, again, what are all the things that we need to do to support a healthy environment while this technology exists.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. You commented that one of the opportunities of AI is that it has the ability to remind us what it means to be human. I love that. And that's a really interesting idea because it's almost the opposite of what you anticipate with AI, you know?
Yeah.
What did you mean by that, do you think?
I think just when you have the awareness again that what you're talking to in a chatbot again is, it's essentially a validation machine and a mirror. And sometimes those things can feel really good, right? That's like exactly what you need in a moment. But relationships are messy and we have to navigate that as well. And being in person with people is never the same as being either remote or not even with a person. I think you would end up realizing that. And that's why I think, again, ahead of time, we all need to recognize those risks so we don't collectively kind of go down that path. Because as we said, it is a utility, there's a tool, there's kind of so many other things that AI can do that's not just chatbots. But we have to, yeah, but the most widely available, most easy thing to do is to just chat with an AI chatbot and think that that's using AI, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, again, I'll use the example of moving to a foreign country and maybe kind of COVID as well, right? Like during COVID, we kind of realized everything moved online and we thought, well, it doesn't work the way that we maybe thought it would, or doesn't have as many, schooling especially. We saw the negative repercussions of that. But again, in moving to a foreign country, I think it became very apparent to me that I missed small in-person connections that you just kind of have day to day that, again, we missed in COVID. Like,
Mm-hmm.
standing beside somebody at the post office, if people go to the post office anymore, going to the grocery store, ordering your coffee in person, like little chit chats. And I really miss that again from a language perspective. And so I think it's those experiences and nature and like all the things that actually make life really special, but that we kind of get otherwise caught up and overwhelmed in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I think the recognition of just because things are difficult doesn't mean that they're like, difficulty is resilience, and that's a good thing,
Yeah.
even though it can feel really uncomfortable and difficult. Um,
Yeah.
and I guess just one point on like that grocery store thing, I started thinking also about like as it relates to technology. Again, with my kids, like, we can order groceries online. We used to do it a lot. And as they got a bit older, it was more reasonable to take them to the grocery store without ending up in fits of screams and something that I wanted to avoid in general. And I started thinking about, okay, well, yeah, I get the convenience of delivery, of shopping when I can in the evening when they've gone to bed, and all of that makes things easier for me. But they're not getting those micro interactions at the grocery store. They're not learning how to pick out food, read a ingredient label, look at price comparisons. Like there are so many lessons, right, that are taught at a grocery store that if I pick what's easiest for me, I'm not giving them that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you start to kind of identify what those opportunities are, then we get to back to the kind of agency and accountability point. We get to claim some of that back again.
Yes, that makes sense. Talking about humanness, one of the very human characteristics is being a friend. And maybe we can segue right into more of a discussion about kids here, because you pointed out that kids may not be able to distinguish between a real friend, a scripted character, or AI. I foresee a lot of necessary conversations around what is a real human friend.
Mm-hmm.
But what do you think it's important for our kids to know about chatbots specifically? Because this is where a lot of the issues have started to arise with kids, and friendship.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's simply they're not your friend, they're a machine, right? They're
Hmm.
programmed in a certain way to respond in a favorable way. They're to think about them as mirrors rather than that, right? You say something, they validate it back. And in terms of parents working alongside their kids, I think that's a really beneficial thing that can be done to help point that out, right? Like in the way that you phrase things or question them and how their response changes or adjusts based on that.
Hmm.
And then reminding kids that, the friend is the one that you get to play with. And yes, friendships can be hard and tough sometimes, but making sure they have the support through that. And again, for me, it's like the worry. I have the worry that like sort of once Pandora's box is opened and people use the chatbot in general, they know it's kind of always there. It becomes this crutch. That's really what I think
Mm-hmm.
concerns me in general. And then it's a whole new battle, right? It's not just
Right.
devices and screen time, but I mean, it's caught up in that, obviously. Um, but it's dependency, and you have seen like people go through, there have been cases of grief when AI companion apps have been deprecated or changed, and I think that's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
So, ideally, it wouldn't happen in the first place based on all the education I would hope that we would do. That would be the ideal scenario. Um, but obviously, there are vulnerable people, and I think some elements of it do a lot of positive for certain people, but I think for minors in particular, developing brains, all of that kind of stuff, I think the general stance of AI companions has been not under 18, period.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I look at some of the behaviors of chatbots that have happened with particular models, and it feels like they stray into what's called companion territory and how they behave, because AI companions are programmed in a certain way to respond in that more companion way. Like general chatbots shouldn't, in theory, be AI companions, but they've been known to exhibit that behavior in some ways, and so that's always sort of in the back of my mind of, well, how do you know as a parent? Or
Right.
in general, and you don't. So it has to be um, supervised at a minimum, I think,
Yeah.
any sort of use.
Do you teach them that they can sometimes cause harm?
I would think so. I mean, just like any kind of unknown thing in the real world, right? Like
Uh-huh.
um, it's an unknown, how we teach tricky people or things like that, right? I think I grew up with stranger danger, but I think we're not supposed to
Right.
use that
That's what
anymore.
this reminds me of a little bit. That's what came
Yeah.
to mind.
Yeah, so that kind of same idea, right? Like you don't know how they're going to behave, and they are and understanding that they have been created by people ultimately, but the smartest people at these organizations or smartest people in AI have admitted that they don't always know why they don't know why they respond in the way that they do or what they're going to respond, right? So if they
Right.
don't know, there's no way that we'll know.
Yes. You mentioned supervising AI interaction, and ideally that is the best for a parent to be involved in that. It seems extremely unlikely to me that parents will be able to do that. But is there a realistic way, do you think, for parents to supervise tech and AI? They're a little different, I guess. I know you said it's good to separate them out, but well, let's talk about AI specifically. Is there a realistic way to supervise it?
Um, so I want to acknowledge that I have not encountered this yet based on the ages of my kids, right? And excuse me, yeah, I haven't encountered this yet for my kids. So I empathize with any parent going through it because I think technology and phones and social media and now AI is a really tough thing to parent. And I think I've said it on my Instagram before, like if it feels like parenting is tough, it's like you're not just parenting your kids, you're parenting a device, you're parenting all the apps, you're supposed to know all the parental controls that are available, all the potential risks, all the safety settings. I mean, it's to your point, kind of impossible in that way. But I think what I'm at least planning on trying to do or aiming to do is, excuse me, delay a smartphone for as long as I can, which is to be determined. I think ideally, Jonathan Haidt and the Anxious Generation, they've done a lot of work on social media, not before 16, and I think ideally I would follow suit for a smartphone or at least have a very limited capability that all, any apps need to be reviewed and things, that we would have a tech agreement and maybe an AI agreement, and ideally have devices and things in relatively public areas of the house if we could manage that. I'm sorry,
It's all right.
I think I'm not used to talking for so long. Or it's the illness that has been going around our household, which I hope not, because next week is
Oh,
school holidays, so we're expecting to go away. But my son was sick earlier this week, so
I
hopefully
hope
that's not
not.
it.
I hope not.
Um, so yeah, I recognize that it's I think a constantly moving target and a tough thing to do, but that's kind of how I'm thinking about approaching it. As of now, and yeah, sort of. Oh dear.
You're fine. No worries. Another concern you mentioned is buying AI toys. What do you think is wrong with that, in your opinion? I know that there were a lot of them out this past holiday season.
Yeah, AI toys. I personally did not see them, I don't think, in market, but again, I did see a lot of social media promotion around them from more US based accounts. I think to me, I get how they could be cool and seem fun and interactive and kind of all the potential benefits that are sold. I recognize all of those, and I see how parents could do that too, right? I think if I hadn't, one of the reasons I've taken an interest in this is because I've just been really curious, and I could see how I would assume that as well, right? Like I think now there is a big kind of technology reckoning that's going on, but when companies say this app is 13 plus, we've generally been like, oh, well, it's 13 plus. That means it's safe for my 13 plus child, and that's not what it means. And so, yeah, now there's sort of this reckoning with that, and I think it's that in and of itself is a really big trend with a lot of implications. But for the toys in particular, there's just not enough testing or data for something to be handed to a kid, I think, that young. Common Sense Media, I think, has done a full evaluation, safety evaluation of certain AI toys, and they have deemed them as unsafe for kids. So I would encourage anybody to check that out in particular, if they're interested on some of the data behind it. But just from a non-data perspective, again, knowing how these chatbots can behave, knowing that we've already seen issues of delusions and suicide and things, and they don't have to disclose what the model is behind the toy, right? So for me, I'm sort of like, well, I know that the model behind a lot of those issues and delusions and things was a model that's not the default model anymore, but it could, and when I've looked into some, was still the model that was used in some of the AI toys. So for me, it's kind of that knowledge as well. But yeah, I would point people probably to the Common Sense Media report for more information.
You mentioned age limits or restrictions. It seems like all of this should have an age appropriate stipulation attached to it. Have there been any guidelines produced that address that?
Yeah, so again, I think Common Sense Media has done a lot,
Okay.
particularly around, like I said, the AI companions not being under 18. The most popular one, Character AI, which was also responsible or was used by some minors who ultimately took their lives. They have since changed their terms and conditions to 18 plus as well.
Okay.
Things like, but from an app perspective, I've never developed an app or put one through the Apple Store or Android Store, but the requirements, they're sort of, as I understand it, self-declared requirements in terms of the age gating. And then there's also a data collection threshold at 13. So for those reasons, I think they're often 13 plus. And 13 plus doesn't necessarily mean that all the safety guardrails that we would want to be there are there, because again, back to AI chatbots, nobody really knows. You don't know what conversation somebody's going to have, so you don't know how it's going to respond, and it's Pandora's box in that way. So I think, yeah, parents really have to have their own filters for any kind of app, and or it's not even just an app, right? I think that's the other thing about ChatGPT in particular is you don't have to log in. You just have to have a browser window to engage, and it's kind of using the Google model in that way, right? Like an open search engine for anybody to use and get mass adoption, and they've been successful in that. But for that reason, it's available to anyone in a browser window, just like any other website.
Yes. Okay. Here's another listener question regarding kids. Will AI further dumb down our society? Our children have already lost skills like writing in cursive, or figuring out how to make change, or figuring out complex problems. Is this going to be another one of those losses?
I think it very possibly could be if we don't have a lot of conversation and put the kind of necessary pressure and things in place to not have that happen. I think ironically on the cursive point, I found it very interesting that a lot of higher education exams seem to be going back to pen and paper, right? So it's clear that you can articulate, what your knowledge of a subject is, and that you can't use AI. And my brain immediately went to, oh, is cursive more important then again? Like obviously most of it's print, and print is fine, and people end up doing, my notes here, some mix of print and script, but I've been thinking about, trying to help my kids with some level of script, nothing too formal, but it crossed my mind just from the point of maybe they can write faster then if they do have to have pen and paper exams, which I would prefer them to have.
Yes. Well,
Um,
that's interesting. I had not heard that before, that they were
yes.
going back.
So I mean, again, it depends on the school, the subjects,
Yeah.
all the things. So, but yeah, I think again, I see, I think it again depends what AI we're talking about, right? AI chatbots see no use case for anyone under 16 using them when I think about it. Like that would I potentially like use them alongside my kids or show them how I'm working with them because I work with them? Yes. Would like have we done things like generate coloring pages? We've done that because it also gave us an opportunity to point out things that were wrong. Oh, like I made a superhero with 3 arms. And but sort of again individual use. I think AI and educational technology intersect, but again, we know that sort of significant screen use for learning is not having a positive impact on kids. So that would be like something I would be trying to understand as well, is how do I mitigate that if possible? And that's why again I think it's a community challenge ultimately, and there are so many different incentives that work as well, right? Like, so I think it's a risk that we have to acknowledge and try and do the work that's required to prevent it.
Okay. And as far as the emotional draw for kids, you noted a study showing that kids use AI 42% of the time for companionship. That is a huge red flag for me on so many levels. Why do you think our kids are looking to AI for companionship?
I don't know which study that was, but I would point people to maybe the HBR one as well, which I think found a lower number of in terms of companionship and relationships than has been maybe previously published. So which one's right and which one's
Yeah.
like across a wide swath of kids? And I'm sure again it depends where, but I would imagine just the ease and the accessibility and the curiosity, right?
Yeah.
Kids are so curious and they don't feel comfortable. Like again, me being a teenager, I didn't feel comfortable coming to my parents with all kinds of things. So, and or going to a friend, or so it becomes that kind of outlet that actually again makes you feel heard and acknowledged, and is I'm sure helpful in in some contexts. So I don't want to take away from that acknowledgement. I just think it can be helpful and it can be hurtful. So
Yeah,
we have to acknowledge both of those and really be aware of the risks.
yeah. Well, I'm just thinking, we talked earlier about humans being lazy. If your life is missing human interaction and the convenience of hopping on a computer screen fulfills that in a very easy way, I can see people just not bothering anymore to make the effort to meet people, to fellowship in the old fashioned way, face to
Mhm.
face. And it's scary to me that kids are kind of setting themselves up for that kind of life.
I think it is really scary as well. I agree, and I think I'm not a therapist or psychotherapist or anything, but
Yeah.
when I've read comments from them, that's it is exactly that they're it I don't know if exploits is the right word, but if you're vulnerable, it again sort of reinforces that.
Yes.
And yeah, to get ahead of that, prevent it, and yeah, I mean, I think therapists will, people as therapists will certainly be needed for a long time.
They'll have a big job ahead of themselves. Yes. Well, I know you've mentioned a couple things that are just foundational. I think you've called it taking care of the basics. And you've already mentioned relationships. We've talked about in person community. You mentioned nature. Why is nature important?
I think you just breathe, right? I mean, people say,
Uh-huh.
oh, there's a lot of like touch grass right now, which I feel like is a very nice way of saying like,
Get back to the
yeah,
dirt.
yeah, exactly. But I think, I mean, there are a few things, right? Like if we stop and recognize, like it sounds like cliche, but when we can recognize the what's out there and the beauty, and I'm fortunate now to live in obviously what people say is what is a beautiful country. But just my kids and I this winter, I again forced myself to stop because I'm a go 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 person. But it was snowing, and we just watched the snowflakes fall, and it was just a really nice time for us. And for me, maybe it's because I grew up with British parents as well. Like one of the pastimes is going for a walk, right? So you always go for walks, and especially in the English countryside. And it's not somewhere that I've lived in the English countryside, but it is beautiful. Um, so just being able to kind of get outside, reset, it's always for me been what I try to do if when I'm struggling. So it could be
Mhm.
I'm struggling at work. I can't get, I don't know, something to work for me. Like literally walking away and then even walking outside,
Yes.
it just helps reset so many things, and
Yeah.
you can go down such a rabbit hole otherwise, but and getting yourself out of it and literally getting outside just I think solves so much. And it's easy to lose sight of that when we have something that can take our attention
All the
all
time.
the time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Another one you mentioned, love and care for their brains. That's interesting that teaching kids about that. You said they need mental and physical protection for curiosity, critical thinking, original thought. Any more comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, um, I used to just mainly think like the brain was something you protect with the helmet, I guess. And
Huh.
it seems very narrow thinking now when I think about it. Not that it's something that we need to, and now as I've gotten older, I've recognized the need to kind of exercise it, right, as well, and make
Yes.
sure you kind of are trying to keep your brain sharp and things. And I think you appreciate that more, especially with like young kids' mother brain, and you put your keys in the fridge or something. Um, and you're sort of like, oh my God, I'm losing it, I'm losing my mind. Um, but I think, again, teaching that appreciation younger that, you know, it's, yes, we protect our brains with a helmet, but we also exercise them and we nurture them and we feed them. And um, we do all of that because we need them to keep our entire body healthy. And that it's so important that we keep our brains active and use them, and that it's you're always building new circuits and learning, and that it's developing. So there's so much more, I think, knowledge and information out there around neuroscience that's just also fascinating, you know, um, that passing on bits of that, of caring for your, like we always, it's always like care for your body, but not as much care for your brain. And I think,
Yes.
yeah, there's an opportunity to, yeah, improve or expand on that.
Yeah. One more. How about understanding attention, that it can be directed, protected, reclaimed? What companies are doing intentionally around attention? That's that's probably a good thing for kids to understand at some age. I know little ones probably aren't able to, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the digital literacy that we were talking about before, right? So, you know, my daughter, we're just starting now to talk about like how the internet works, that it's a giant web that extends to almost everyone around the world. And that's why I can talk to somebody who lives in the US or who lives in the UK or who lives in Australia or wherever. And then about apps. Now we're talking about apps, and different apps are different purposes and the companies behind them. Um, and, you know, identifying little bits of AI behind the scenes, right? What's invisible, things like recommendations on YouTube or Netflix. Oh, based on what you watch, they want you to watch this. Who wants you to watch that? Um, how do they know what you watched, right? So just getting their curiosity up, I think, as well. Um, and they'll ask better questions than I could probably feed anyway. I would think. Um, and sort of back to that, you know, when eventually they are using some of these other apps, understanding what gets you to stay, right? What made you excited? Oh, they created something that made you feel like you had to do something else, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then, yeah, ideally, understanding that they don't have to, and that they're in control. But I think that's where, you know, for social media in particular, the peer pressure element has been so tough for parents, right? So um, it's been such an uphill battle from that perspective.
Yes, it has. That's amazing, though. That's a lot more what you just described than most adults understand, I think. So that would be pretty great if our kids could, from a young age, get their arms around those concepts with all that they are going to have to navigate. It sounds like it's key to really staying connected with them as they get launched into all this strange new world they're about to navigate. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot. I think it's like, it's a whole, that's what I always think, like, nobody, I mean, there's no handbook for parenting in general, but there's a lot of information out there. And I should probably look for some books on digital literacy and things. I haven't dived into it yet. I've just sort of been creating my own and feeling my way out, and what I think is important, and talking to more and more people and trying to share that information, obviously.
Yeah.
Um, so that's one of my goals, is to just give parents resources,
Mm-hmm.
find them for them, share them, um, so there sort of becomes some kind of guidance.
Yes.
Not that anybody has the answers, though, I think, right? Like, we're all
Right.
learning this together and adapting in real time. And just when you feel like you got your head around one thing, there's something else happening.
True.
But I guess
True.
that's parenting in general.
Right. Well, from what I've seen, you've done a remarkable job. So I appreciate your presence out there.
Thank
Well,
you.
Rowena, this podcast is called Lessons from Living. And we always ask our guests whatever subject we're talking about. And this is kind of an unusual one for us to broach today. But we ask them about the lessons that they have gleaned throughout their life and whether one rises to the top.
I think for me, it's don't be afraid to get out of your comfort zone.
Oh, that's a good one.
Um, I've moved countries twice. It took me a while into adulthood to do that and take the leap, but and it's not always been sunshine and rainbows, but I think you come out stronger on the other side of more perspective and different perspectives, and I think find something that's kind of outside your comfort zone, or learn something new. And it's the feelings that you get once you've accomplished that a lot.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for fielding that. I'm always so fascinated by what people come up with as their top life lesson. Well, as we close, how might people get in touch with you if that is your desire?
Yeah. So right now, the easiest way is I'm on Instagram under Raising Future Minds. Hopefully, I'll be launching a website soon, but in the meantime, we'll have a newsletter that you can sign up for more kind of deep dive information into certain things. And yeah, you can DM me there. And if there are questions, topics, I would love to hear them, because again, as I said, I think we're all navigating this, and the discussion is what we need. And like I said, I'm working on more parent resources and compiling, and so I would love to just hear feedback on what people think would help them the most.
Yeah, sounds good. So did you give the address for
For
your
Instagram,
Instagram?
and the website, when it launches, the Instagram handle is just Raising Future Minds, and the website will be
Okay.
that too. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I didn't know if there was something else to it. Well, Rowena, but you've been awesome. This has been this has been very enlightening. I'm so overjoyed to have somebody address this topic, because I know there are so many people with lots of questions around it, and particularly where kids are concerned. It's just all new to all of us. So I'm really grateful to you for your time today, for sharing your knowledge.
Well, I'm just learning like everybody else, I think, as well. So I hope it was helpful for people.
It absolutely was. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Rowena, thank you so much for your time today. This has been really educational and enlightening. I think it will help a lot of people as they seek to navigate all of these issues surrounding AI. So much to think about, more than I ever could have imagined. We will leave today with the words of Ram Dass, who says, "Without remaining open to change, we cannot remain open to life." Thanks for listening, and go out and make it a great day.